Yes, this session will be recorded, so please mute your microphones and switch off your cameras, but this is just a warning because everyone's been very good. All right, so let's get started. First, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Diana, and I'm one of the CELTA trainers. I'm the director of teacher training at International Language Center. I'm one of the CELTA trainers here. And I'm also a CELTAS and Delta Modules 1 and 2 trainer. And today I'd like to talk to you about the CELTA course because, well, I really think that this is a fantastic course to take and it is a fantastic experience. And lately there have been some, I don't know, probably because this course is so popular and people around the world know this qualification. There's been a lot of kind of myth circulating around this course. So that's why I do want to talk to people about this course and give them as much information as possible and give them this opportunity to ask questions about the course. Because if you are considering taking this course and if it is the right course for you, I think you really need to think about taking it. So during this workshop, we're going to talk about lesson planning, and there will be some time at the end of the workshop for the questions that you have. So, but before we get there, I'd like to meet you as well. So could you please find the chat box, and in the chat box, please write your answers to these 3 questions. So where you're based, the school, company, university you work for, which institution you work for, or if you don't work for any institution, you can just write freelancer, and the age of the students that you work with. Okay, I'll be quiet for a minute, waiting for your answers. Okay, and here's my example. Right. Hello, Sophia. Hello, Natalia. All right. Primary school A+. Okay. In Kiev. Interesting. I know of a school like that in Khmelnytsky. Right. Sophia from Lviv. Great. Those people who are joining us, please write the answers to the questions you can see in the chat box. Ternopil, all right. Ooh. Kiev, well, that's quite a range. It's good to have people from different parts of Ukraine here. Yes, and actually during this webinar, we're likely to have all the people from Ukraine, but on CELTA courses, we do get a lot of people from other countries as well, especially with the online option now. Right, well, thank you. Please keep sharing your answers. All right, Tasha, Andrei, good, wow. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Let's get started now, but please feel free to write the answers to the questions here. So here's what we're going to talk about today. First of all, we're going to talk about why lesson planning is important, and not only in life, but on the CELTA course. But again, of course, what we do in the classroom during the CELTA course could be different from what you do in real life. And one of the reasons for that is because we have very strict time limits, and you have to teach 45-minute lessons. No shorter, no longer than that. And also you're being observed by a lot of other people. So that's why we cannot say that it's really like a real lesson. But of course, during this lesson, you can learn a lot of good practices and you can show them and practice them. So, but lesson planning is important on the CELTA course because it is important in real life as well. Natalia, the workshop will last for 1 hour, possibly a bit longer, but it's 1 hour. All right. And by the way, please write your questions in the chat box because I will get back to them when we get to the questions and answers part. So we're going to talk about the parts of a lesson plan. So if you are considering taking the CELTA course in the foreseeable future, this is something that could be very helpful and will help you feel more confident when taking the course. We're going to talk about anticipating problems when planning your lessons and possible solutions to them. Main lesson types on a CELTA course, of course, well, we understand that there will be more, but some of them will be introduced to today, and some general tips for lesson planning. And your questions after that. Okay, so lesson planning. And here I'd like you to participate again. So here's the question. How often do you write lesson plans? When I say write lesson plans, I do not mean a typed up document, which is like 10 pages long, no, but still, do you need to have like an A4 sheet of paper or some piece of paper or whatever? I don't know, I like paper, I'm a bit old fashioned and old school, but how often do you actually write up what you're planning to do in the lesson? You can write words, just notes briefly, okay, good. This is so good. I'm really pleased to see that because, well, I'm one of those people who cannot just walk into the classroom with a book and feel confident and know what to do and know what to anticipate. So it's great that you are here for this workshop today. All right, so here's some facts about lesson planning on the CELTA course. Again, so because, well, that is an important course, it's a challenging course. And again, the purpose of this workshop is to introduce you and give you some more information about the course. So first of all, lesson planning is one of the 5 topic areas in the CELTA syllabus. There are 5 big topics and lesson planning is one of them. So it's like 20% of what should be taught on the CELTA course, but it does affect everything else, everything that happens in the classroom. Well, officially it's topic 4, planning and resources for different teaching contexts, because at the moment we no longer talk about CELTA as a course for teaching adults. There is a lot of useful information there and techniques for teaching kids as well, and different and teaching exam classes and even business English, because we're talking about effective classroom practices. There are to this lesson planning, well, Cambridge Assessment English indicated 14 out of the 41 CELTA criteria that we have when we assess teaching practice. So it's 14 out of 41 criteria. And this makes up for more than 1/3 of the assessment and of the grades, basically, for the lessons that you teach on the CELTA course, because it is a practical course, despite what some people might say. And there will be teaching practice, and of course, lesson planning is almost 1/3 of that. So this is just a screenshot from the document that we have on the course. You don't need to worry about it too much. I think even on the CELTA courses, people don't care about what's written in those documents sometimes. But this is just to show you, these are the criteria that we use to assess lesson planning on the course. So why is lesson planning so important on the CELTA course? If you have some ideas, could you please type them in the chat box, because well, teacher talk is not the best thing to happen on the CELTA course. Of course, this is a webinar, but I do like to get some feedback from you as well. So why is lesson planning important? Could you please type up your ideas? Mhm. Yes, thank you, Natalia. If we have no aim, well, it's difficult to know where you're going and why you're teaching this lesson. Absolutely. So it paces the teacher. So yes, it does provide you with the, well, it does help you to understand what needs to be done in the lesson. And so we can feel more confident about that. Absolutely, Andre. Right. Here's some of the, Natalia, it helps to structure and make a system of what we're going to do at the lesson. It helps to reach the goal, yes. And Elena wrote that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Well, that is quite often true. Yes. Timing possible problems, yes. And timing is actually one of the issues that presents a big problem for a lot of candidates on the course. And yes, it's important to know and to try to predict it at least to make sure that you manage to get to the end of the lesson and reach the aims of the lesson. Great. So here's some of the ideas. Thank you very much for being so active and sharing your answers. It encourages candidates to analyze language for teaching purposes. And language analysis is part of lesson planning on the CELTA course. If you have to teach a difficult aspect of the language, especially at higher levels, you need to know more about, as much as possible, about what you're teaching in order to be able to present it so that the learners understand when to use this language and what for. And also you need to be prepared to answer some of their questions because your students will have a lot of them and it's our job as a teacher to help them. It includes materials used for teaching. And again, if you do not know what materials you have, if you cannot manage them properly, you cannot teach a good lesson, especially in the 45 minutes that you have. Predicting timing, as mentioned, it shows that the candidate knows what to do and why they need to do it during the lesson to achieve positive learning outcomes. So it's not only about a set of activities you give people, it's about the thinking behind those activities and how they help the learner to learn something new or to practice what you want them to practice. It helps to prepare for potential issues that may arise during the lesson. We mentioned that as well. It provides evidence for the candidate's understanding, there should be an apostrophe there that I missed, of teaching and learning principles. And it helps to prove that a candidate merits a grade higher than a pass, because on the CELTA course, there are 3 possible grades. Most of the candidates get the pass grade. There is also the pass B grade for, I would say about 20% of the candidates get that, pass A for 5%, and it is also possible to fail the course, unfortunately. But still, lesson planning does show for the tutors and for the assessor from Cambridge that the candidate can get a grade higher than a pass. So if anyone's kind of shooting for anything, for a grade, B or an A, then they do need to pay more attention to the lesson planning, and because it basically serves as evidence of their understanding of the principles of teaching and learning. So, what sort of information do you include in the lesson plans? You mentioned that you make notes always, but here's some ideas. Could you please write your answers in the chat box? Just letters are fine, all right? For example, I'm going to, while you're typing, here's my example. So basically every lesson that I teach, it's A to G for me. I do not make a list of anticipated problems, I have to confess. But again, with my teaching experience, more often than not, and as a teacher and a trainer now, I managed to deal with most of them. right, thank you for sharing. I'll summarize in a minute. All right. It's interesting that not many people mentioned instructions. A couple of you did, but not many of you. And I'll make a small comment about that. Instructions do help. I write down my instructions when I work with lower levels or with young children. Especially if I have to move from a higher level to a lower level, like beginners, then I do script my instructions because I do not want to overwhelm them. And all of the teaching, well, the language that I use in the classroom is English. So the instructions have to be short and clear. And this is when I script them in my lesson plans. Right, all good ideas. And actually all of these, well, and more you will have to include in your lesson plans on the CELTA course. Let's have a little bit of practice now, and this is exactly when you need to make notes before you write your answers, so this would be helpful. I'd like you to match the items, the green items, which are some parts of a lesson plan, the cover page of a CELTA lesson plan, to what they are. So match the green boxes to the orange, I don't know, circles and names. The first one, by the end of the lesson, students will be better able to use present simple to interview each other about daily routines. This is an example of a lesson aim, absolutely. Okay. So you know what to do. I'll give you like 30 seconds for that. Have a look and write your answers, please. Okay. All right, so thank you very much for your answers. Here are my answers, and looks like all we're pretty much on the same page. That's very good. Thank you, and thank you so much for participating. All right. And when you open the lesson plan, that was the cover page. And this is what you can see inside the lesson plan. So please have a look, read what you can see in different columns and match the columns. Again, the numbers here, you have going back, 1, 2, 3, and 4 to the descriptions, to what should be there in the green boxes. Again, just 30 seconds for that. Let's see the answers. Good. Right, good job. Thank you. You're mostly right. Here are my answers. So in the lesson plan, of course, we have the stages, which I'm going to talk about a bit later, because those are going to be the main kind of frameworks or types. So those are normally given to you on the CELTA course, because those are the effective, that seems to be the effective staging to follow on those CELTA courses, with some minor deviation from center to center. So this is the first column. Then we describe the procedure, what the learners will be doing, what the teacher will be doing, and we'll talk about what to include in the procedure to make it more helpful for you. The stage aims are number 3. It's important to know why you are doing this and why you need to have this stage in the lesson. And the last column here that you can see is the interaction patterns, how the learners are going to work. Is the teacher going to talk to the whole class, to all students? Are students going to work individually? Are they going to work in pairs, groups of 3, etc.? And the timing for each stage, right? Now, I'm going to make it a bit more difficult for you now. So what sort of information do you think is necessary to include in the procedure? What can you write about the procedure of the lesson in the procedure column of, well, in the CELTA lesson plan? Could you please write your ideas in the chat box? My favorite thing to write in the procedure would be the instructions that you give to the learners. What else can you add to the procedure? Structure, dictating mode of presentation, task instructions, yes. Sub aim. Normally that goes, the sub aim goes onto the cover sheet, but task and instructions, it's good. It's stages of the lesson, but stages, there is a separate column for that. All right, it's interesting that Natalia mentioned that there should be the task and the instructions. And actually on the CELTA course, instructions are slightly different from, well, if you come to think about it. Instructions are one thing and task setup is a different thing, because sometimes with more difficult tasks, when you want students to prepare, to compare, to make notes, and then to discuss something and present their arguments, agree and disagree, sometimes there are several stages to the tasks. So thinking about how they're going to do that and the logistics and everything is actually different from simply giving the instructions, because in some situations you will need to give instructions several times for the same task at different stages. Questions, yes. So here are some of the ideas. Instructions, my favorite. Instruction checking questions. Please drop a plus in the chat box if you know what those are. What are instruction checking questions, or the ICQs? Yes. ICQs and CCQs are the important, are the very kind of famous things from CELTA courses. Instruction checking questions are a set of simple, normally yes or no or alternative questions that you ask your learners after you've given the instructions to check if they understood them and were listening or not. Yes, so those are the instruction checking questions that we use to help us understand whether we need to help them more with the task or they kind of know what they need to do. All right, so after that, you need to include the time limit that you give to your students. because it's one thing how long you expect the activity to last, and it's what you tell your students is different. For example, if you want them to complete the task fast, it's a good idea to tell them that they've got only 2 minutes for that, but you understand that probably it's going to take them longer, and then they're going to check in pairs, and after that you're going to do feedback in an open class. So the stage itself could take like 5 minutes, but the time limit that you give to the students would be only 2. References to the exercises that you're planning to do. This is quite useful, and people sometimes do not, and some candidates on CELTA courses forget to do that, but it's good to make sure that the trainer who looks at the lesson plan can also see what you are planning to do. Answer key to the exercises could be what the teacher will be doing, because it's, well, normally when the students are busy, the teacher is not relaxing and should be doing something useful for the learners at the same time, such as monitoring, preparing the board for delayed feedback. If we talk about online lessons, setting up breakout rooms, because some people who teach online and who use breakout rooms, they know that it takes time, and sometimes you want to regroup people, you want them to do something in pairs or groups of 3. So that does take time. And it should be done while the students are busy, not while they're waiting for you to organize the breakout rooms. You can also include information on how you're planning to do open class feedback, and that's very important. Open class feedback, in a nutshell, it's basically checking the answers after the activity. And well, those are some of the things you could include. If you need a screenshot, this is the time for that, because that could be some helpful information for the CELTA course if you're planning to take it in the near future. All right, moving on to the next one, anticipating problems. It's good to anticipate them, because if you know what the possible problems are, you'll be able to address them quickly and effectively, efficiently, in one word. Here's a task for you. First, on the CELTA course, we normally talk about 3 different categories of problems. The first one is classroom management, and managing the physical or virtual features of the classroom. Could be, if we talk about the offline classroom, that would be opening the windows, making sure that everything works. For the online classroom, that would be organizing the breakout rooms, making sure that the documents are in the right place, and you're ready to share the links to the handouts that you're planning to use in the lesson. So this is classroom management. Skills work. What we need to help students with, or the problems that students might face while reading, writing, speaking, or listening, and problems with the language if they do not understand the language. So there are 3 different sets of problems we need to think about on the CELTA course, and it does help if you know where to put them, and because you do need to address them in slightly different ways, right? So 3 categories, and here are the 6 problems. Could you please take a minute and match the problems to the categories? For example, number 1, learners will not be able to read the text in 2 minutes. This could be a skills-related problem. So number 1 is B. Now, please take 1 minute and match the rest of them. When you're done, you can write the answers in the chat box. Mm-hmm. Great. All right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Some good answers here. Most of you are correct, but there are some things we are going to talk about now. Thank you. All right, so classroom management. There will be an odd number of students. Yes, this is a classroom management problem, and students will not know how to take a screenshot. This is definitely classroom management problem because for online classes, they do need to know how to use Zoom and how to work, how to use their computers during the lessons. So basically, this is like knowing how to open a book and find the right page and taking a screenshot. Those are classroom management problems, because this is about the management of the materials and the work during the lesson. Skills work. Learners will not be able to read, say, the text in 2 minutes, and there are a lot of new words in the listening. This could seem like a language problem, but because, well, if they do not know words, well, they don't know the language. But the thing is that with the language problems, those have to be more specific, and they have to deal with meaning, form, and pronunciation of the language. So this problem is a bit too general for language problems. So it is a problem with the listening. And it is our job as a teacher to anticipate this problem and know how to deal with it. One of the ways would be to pre-teach some of the words, which is a common way. Some people will say it's not the best idea, and sometimes I will agree with them, because in real life, there is no one who's going to pre-teach words for us. But, or alternatively, you could just give them a task that does not require the understanding of those words, because in real life, when we listen to texts in a foreign language, we do not have to know every single word that we hear, but we need to be able to find the information that we need to find. So when you anticipate problems with skills, that could affect your task design and some activities that you include in the lesson. The last one, language. Students will think that artist means actor. I think that, well, we understand that this is a problem that could be connected to the first language of the students. And students will stress the third syllable in the word supermarket, right? Because the stress on the first one. And when you anticipate that, you know that you will need to spend some time drilling that word and writing it for them to see the correct stress. And it's much easier to do that in a face-to-face classroom, because you can just grab the marker and write it on the board. But in an online classroom, you know, it could be more time consuming. For example, I'm not that fast in actually writing on the board in Zoom. So I tend to anticipate those problems and prepare slides for those problems where they can see the word with the stress. All right, language analysis. I'm going to make this part brief because, first of all, I've already done a workshop on some aspects of language analysis, and you can find it on our YouTube channel. And again, in a workshop like that, in like 5 or 10 minutes, I cannot give you enough information and even gonna emphasize enough how important language analysis is on the CELTA course when you teach grammar, vocabulary, or functions lessons. But I'll give you some idea of what you will need to do as part of the lesson planning. So here's another question for you. You've been so good participating and writing in the chat box. So I'm going to ask you to do that one more time, and I warned you about that. So what do you need to know about the word before you teach it? Some ideas. So here's the first one. Definition of meaning in your context, right? So you need to know what the word means. That's the first thing. What else do you need to know about the word to know it or to teach it? Yes, pronunciation, Andrei, absolutely. Who's writing on my board? Mm-hmm. All right. So phrases with the word, collocations, that's possible. Other shades of meaning, yes, connotation, connection with other words, how it works in a sentence, how it is pronounced. I'm reading the chat if you cannot see it for you not to get distracted. What forms it may have, suffixes and prefixes. This is very good. Collocations with other words. Suffixes and prefixes, by the way, could be useful because students may actually know a word which is related to this one with the suffix or prefix, which is different or different part of speech, right? So using that word to help them understand the meaning of the word that you are teaching is very helpful. Meaning, form, pronunciation, collocations, yes. How to use it in the context, yes, that's appropriate. And part of speech, absolutely. So basically you mentioned everything I was going to talk about. So part of speech is the next thing you need to know. How it is spelled. Actually, no one mentioned that. So spelled could be with T or ED, by the way. Yeah, this is the form, yes. Spelling is the form. Well, it's part of the form. I think part of speech and how it works in a sentence is also part of that. So part of speech could be countable and uncountable nouns. That's also part of the form. How it is pronounced, how it is spelled twice, sorry about that. Formal or informal, it's how to use it in the context. Yes, so that's important. And does it have positive or negative connotation? Here's some of the things. I didn't include all of the things we will talk about and we need to bear in mind, but you mentioned a lot of other good ideas. So yes, there is a bit more on the CELTA course. I don't want you to learn everything today. Right, so here's an example. He was an average student in his school days. Average is the word we're interested in. Just to give you an example of what language analysis should look like. Here it is. So this is a form that you will need to complete as part of your lesson plan when teaching vocabulary or grammar. So in this case, we're looking at vocabulary. At the top, you can see the context of your lesson, story about a successful businessman. And he was a rather average student in his school days. So here on the left, you can see the marker sentence, the sentence in which you use the word, in which you present the word, because the sentence actually helps to create the context for the learners to even understand the meaning of the word or to start understanding it. So what do you need to include after that? First, conveying meaning. James wasn't a very good student at school. He got distracted all the time and his grades were not very good, but not the worst in his class. So average. Elicitation questions. So you need to ask them a question to try and see if they know the word. So what would you call a student like James, who is not very good at not very bad? And this is where you'd expect the students to say average, or at least to get the idea in their heads or in their L1 of the word that they would use in this context, right? So which creates the need for the language. And this is this elicitation question. It's really you're kind of asking them for this word. And if they don't know, you provide the word, you give them the word average. You need to state in your language analysis the meaning, which normally comes from a dictionary if we talk about vocabulary. If we're teaching grammar, that comes from a good grammar book, respectable grammar book. checking understanding, these are the CCQs, concept checking questions. I'm sure you've heard of those. Again, those should be simple yes or no questions. So was James better than other children of his age? No. Was he a bad student? No. Were his parents happy with his grades? No. So these are the instruction checking questions, which help to check the learner's understanding of different parts of the meaning of this word. And again, there is a video on our YouTube channel with more information on language analysis, conveying meaning and checking understanding. And then there's information about the form and how it is pronounced using the IPA. Right. Again, you can, well, after looking at this, you can understand that language analysis could be quite time consuming, and so is lesson planning on the CELTA course. So it's good to remember about that and in order to be well prepared for that. All right, and here's the one more thing I'd like to talk to you about. This is the language frameworks, shapes, or staging of the lesson. By the frameworks, well, you will hear lesson frameworks or lesson shapes. We talk about the same thing. How do we order activities in a lesson? So this is what it is. And here's Marina, one of our CELTA trainers. All right, so in general, there are three main types of lessons on the CELTA course. So language lessons, when you teach grammar, vocabulary, and functions, we structure them in one way. Receptive skills lessons for listening and reading lessons. The staging there is different, and productive skills lessons. Of course, actually, well, we all know that there's lots of ways to skin a cat. So there are different frameworks that could be used in different situations. So for language lessons, the most common ones are a text-based lesson or a text-based presentation of language. And actually, in general, this is the structure that most course books use. You know, when there is reading or listening first, and then we take some language, one sentence or several words from the text, and we start analyzing the grammar and the new vocabulary or lexis. There's the test, teach, test, and TBL. Normally on CELTA courses, not many centers do TBL, but if the trainers feel that the candidates are ready for that, so why not? It is possible. So receptive skills lessons, normally that is the kind of the most straightforward lesson you can have. Then productive skills lessons, writing and speaking. There's the product approach to writing. There is the process approach to writing, not so much for the speaking, but for speaking it's also possible actually. And task-based learning, TBL, as well. There are different versions like strong or weak, but again, normally on the CELTA course, you will have one or two of those lesson types. So right now, we're going to talk about three of those. So a text-based presentation of grammar, vocabulary, and functions, receptive skills lessons, and productive skills lessons, writing and speaking, the product approach. So, okay, I've done my share the talking. Now, could you please, on your piece of paper, in your phone, wherever, put these stages of a text-based language lesson, grammar, vocabulary, or functions in the correct order? Right, 1 minute for this. You can write them on a piece of paper. You do not have to write them in the chat box unless you really want to. I'll show you the correct answers, but it's good to practice and check. All right, 20 seconds left. I can see some answers. Natalia is almost right, so very, very close. Good job. Yes, Sophia, you're closer. All right. Fantastic. You know it all. Yes. Here are the main stages of a text-based language lesson. Well, normally it's very difficult to do this in a 45-minute lesson, so you have to be very, very careful. Or we could break it into two lessons, one reading lesson or listening lesson, and one language lesson following that. Okay, so the first one is the lead-in. You get them interested in the topic, then the reading to provide, but again, they need to understand the text and what the text is about, because it provides the situational context for the language. Then you clarify the meaning, form, and pronunciation of the language. You give them some control practice. Normally, this is either a drill or a writing exercise, like a gap fill or something. And then freer practice when they either speak or write using the new language, and then feedback on the language. So this gives you the chance to correct some of the mistakes after freer practice. At some centers, you will see that this is part of freer practice. Yes, so you're right. Good job, everyone. Let's move on to the next one. Now we have a minute to put the stages of a receptive skills lesson in the correct order. Here you have, well, some more. So here you have 7 stages. Please take 1 minute to put them in the correct order. Twenty seconds left. All right, so in the chat box, I wrote reading or listening lesson, just to make sure that we can see that this is the next lesson, not the grammar one. So if you'd like, you can write your answers in the chat box. All right, thank you, Natalia. Okay. All right. Very close, but I'll tell you, this is a trick question because of the pre-teaching blocking vocabulary. So let's have a look at the correct answers. Thank you very much for sharing your answers. All right, so have a look at this. I'll give you like 30 seconds just to read. Okay, so normally there is the lead-in and the pretext discussion. That could be one activity actually, but it's important to remember that the purpose of the lead-in is to actually introduce the topic and get them interested in the topic of the lesson. And the pretext discussion helps them to get closer to the text and helps get them to start thinking in the direction of the lesson. For example, if you want to talk about money, or, well, no, do not talk about politics, or some country in Southeast Asia, you know, you need to kind of slightly push them in that direction, you know, so that would be the pretext discussion. Predicting blocking vocabulary, that's the interesting thing. Actually, it can be done after the lead-in. You can do it after the lead-in here. Yeah, sorry, just give me a second. Yes, so stamp. Yes, so it can be done after the lead-in. It can be done after the pretext discussion, where you can see it here. And it can also be done after the first reading or listening, right? So all of those are possible options, so 3 different places. Actually, it's also possible to have a reading or listening lesson without it as well. It's up to you, depending on how difficult the text is and whether there are a lot of unknown words there. Normally, we do not do the post-text discussion after the first reading, because normally that's an easier one, reading for just for the general idea or for some specific information. This is the first encounter with the text. They do not have to understand it in depth. So that's why the post-text discussion would be to respond to the content of the text and some information in the text. Normally, it comes after the second reading. Right. Now, this time, this is the last lesson framework we're going to look at. So productive skills, speaking or writing. And here the task is slightly different. You can see the stages here. I'd like you to think about what the purposes are for the first, for number 1, what is the stage aim for the lead-in, and what is the stage aim for the feedback on language. This is some revision. So please take a minute to look at the table and write your answers for number 1 and 2. You can see some answers. Yes. Yes, you are correct. Thank you very much for the answers. Natalia's were the first ones to answer. All right, you can see my answers here. So yes, we'll remember now the purpose of the lead-in, the stage aim for that, and for the feedback on language, right? To provide some error correction at the end of the lesson or after some speaking or writing activity. Right, so and we're done with the frameworks. Now, to summarize, here's some tips for lesson planning during the CELTA course, because it can be scary, it can be stressful, it can be time consuming, right? So here are some tips that should help you to cope with it better when you decide to take this course. First of all, remember what the focus of the lesson is. If it's not clear to you, double check with your tutor on the course. You need to remember, if it's a reading lesson, then the staging should be reading, and that's your main focus of the lesson, not teaching them some words. If it is a grammar lesson, then that's your main focus. Make sure your aim has a clear outcome for the learners, because it will help you if you know what the learners should do at the end of the lesson to show that your aim is achieved. This should be part of the aim, because it will help you understand how to get there and how to make sure that the aims are achieved. Plan backwards. Sometimes it is a good idea to start with the last activity, especially if we talk about teaching grammar, vocabulary, functional language, speaking or writing. You need to think about what the last activity should be. What should be the product of the lesson that they get at the end. And then you need to start planning the stages leading up to this. Or if you do not plan backwards, you can check your timing backwards, starting from the last activity. Always a good thing to do. Make sure you spend enough time on the main focus of the lesson. So if it is a reading lesson and you have 45 minutes, please make sure that you spend at least 15 or 20 minutes on the reading, not 5 minutes reading and 30 minutes teaching them the pre-teaching blocking vocabulary, because, well, that's not the main focus of the lesson and not the main aim. Make your timing more realistic. One stage, online stages normally do not take less than 5 minutes. It takes time to put people in the breakout rooms, to get them back, to make sure that all of them are talking, to see what they're writing. It is time consuming. So if you write in the lesson plan that that's gonna take like 2 minutes, well, probably that's not gonna happen. Try not to plan more than 5 stages for an online lesson. Yes, the stages that you saw, there were 6 of them sometimes, but some of those could be combined. Some of them could be left out. So think about it. Yes, 5 stages plus feedback on language. But that's normally you will not have enough time to do more in a 45-minute lesson, especially online. Remember to create user-friendly materials, especially for online lessons, because it's important to make sure that the students can write in them if you send them a Word document or a PDF. Set time limits for your lesson planning, not for the students to do the activities, but for yourself. Sometimes if you have 20 hours to plan one lesson, you will spend 20 hours planning that lesson. It's not going to make it better, but it's going to deprive you of some valuable sleeping time. So make sure that you time yourself and pace yourself. 1 hour for language analysis, 1 hour to make the materials, 1 minute to write everything up. That's it. Do not spend more. Proofread, that helps. And yeah, I know I should have done that as well. And try, speaking of proofreading, try to submit language analysis with every lesson plan. Yes, it depends on the center. Some centers will require it for every lesson that you teach. In some lessons, you will not have that much new language to teach, but still it's a good thing because this is practice, right? And language analysis is one of the most challenging parts of a CELTA course, right? So this is it from me in terms of the lesson planning. Now, if you have any questions, please write them in the chat box now. Yes, so I'm going to, Natalia mentioned that used print screens for the materials. I think I do not like print screens for the materials because I do want people to engage with the materials and to be able to write or something. So, well, they need to be able to write or type in the materials because this is how they actually, well, engage with them more and do something with them. With the print screen, they can just talk about it or not talk about it, think about it or not think about it. If they write in the handout, I think it's more productive. All right, so please write the questions. Here's some information. So our next online CELTA course starts in a week from now, actually on Friday, and I think there's still 1 or 2 places left. So if you're interested, please join us. If not, well, this course is part-time, so it's 13-week long, 13 weeks long, gosh. And it will be done via Zoom only. There will be, well, all of the trainers are people we've worked with for a long time. Some of them are staff. There is one freelance trainer. Her name is Jennifer, and but she's been with our center for some time now. And the good thing is that if you started on the 21st of January, you'll be done by Easter and May holidays and breaks. So that's very good. If not, there will be intensive CELTA courses, which will be 4 weeks plus 2 days long in summer. And the next part-time course will be in September. So if you have any questions, please get in touch with us. We'll be happy to help you choose the right one for you. Also, well, about things happening in January, on the 22nd of January, we're going to start our last CELT-P and CELT-S courses. So if you work with children and would like to get better at this and get a Cambridge certificate, this is basically the last chance to get it, because unfortunately Cambridge Assessment English are withdrawing that product because, well, they despite the popularity and the fact that there are more and more people taking this course worldwide, well, they decided to withdraw it because they expected to have more people interested in it. Probably takes time and better advertising, but oh well. But still, if you work with primary school students and secondary school students, and you have a group of children with at least 5 people, this is a very good course because you get to practice teaching not on somebody else's students, but you will practice and learn new things while working with your group, which makes it fantastic, really. So the last chance to take this course is actually in January. And well, I cannot see any questions. Please write the questions. Okay. I can see questions. Fantastic. All right. Andre, what benefits does CELTA certificate bring locally, internationally? Is there any difference between online and offline CELTA versions? Are there any possible discounts? All right, so yes, the benefits. Locally, internationally, private schools locally and internationally recognize that certificate. So it's much easier to get a job in a foreign country with a CELTA certificate. A CELTA certificate is something that when applying for a job in another country, normally you get a job with a language school, and then they will need to get a work permit for you. And the CELTA certificate is one of the documents that many governments actually require in order to hire a person from another country. It depends on the legislation of the country. So I would say, yes, there are definitely benefits. And even in Ukraine, teachers with CELTA normally get a higher hourly rate than people without it. The main difference between the online and the offline CELTA is the mode of delivery. With the offline CELTAs, you're in the classroom. With the online CELTAs, you're online, and we teach everything. We do the courses using Zoom. So the certificate that you get is the same. The content is the same because we have the same syllabus for online and offline CELTA courses. So I would say there are some differences. For example, yes, with online courses, it's kind of, it's difficult. Let's put it this way. You do kind of want more time for classroom management. So you can technically do a bit more in a face-to-face lesson in 45 minutes than you would do in an online classroom, but it takes practice. It's important to remember that the online mode is actually a good mode. It's very convenient. It saves you time and money, and people are more used to it now. So this is I think that it's a great thing that happened to us. But You also need to remember that it's about you teaching and what sort of teaching you do on a regular basis. If it is online, then take the online CELTA. If it's face-to-face, it's better to take the face-to-face CELTA. In summer, in September, we'll be doing the mixed mode when you get to teach half of the course in a face-to-face classroom and half of the course in an online classroom. But for that, you will need to be in Kiev. For the online course, you do not have to be in Kiev, right? So are there any possible discounts? Normally, we have the early bird fee, which is 2,000 lower than what you saw. If you pay for the CELTA course, complete the interview and everything 5 weeks before the course starts. So this is kind of the discount that we have for the CELTA course. All right, next question. Yes, CELT-P is for the last time. Unfortunately, there will not be classes in September. So the courses that we're starting on Saturday next week will be the last course you can take in Ukraine and worldwide, because due to the regulations and the latest updates from Cambridge, all of the courses, the last CELT-P courses, need to start before the end of February 2022. So Natalia, if you are interested in this course, please get in touch with us. And if you want to take it, this is the last chance, really. So, and we can talk about the discounts, we can talk about paying installments, but it is a good course to take. And we're all trainers are really sad that they're actually discontinuing them. Right. And with the CELT-P course, you will have to do all the teaching and finish all the teaching parts by the end of May. Send the link for the certificate in the chat box. Yes, I will do it now, I know. I was busy answering the questions. Here you are. Here's the link, it's easier to copy there. All right, we have some questions. I think I answered about, in terms of quality, I will say that actually there are no differences. I worked on face-to-face CELTAs, I worked on the online course, and I really enjoyed the online course. And I think that CELTA trainers started working on online courses starting from April 2020, when the whole thing started to happen. And I think we really know how to teach online well now. So in terms of quality, I would say that online courses are no worse. It is important to remember, though, that some online courses, the inputs, meaning the new information, like input sessions, like workshops like this one, at some centers, they are put on the Moodle. So you do it online only without the face-to-face interaction. On our CELTA courses, we do everything as we would in a normal classroom, but we do it in a face-to-face classroom. So there will be breakout rooms for you to talk to. There will be trainers around all the time. So this is what makes, this is something that could actually affect the quality. So if you decide to take CELTA online, please make sure that you ask if the input is done on Zoom or via Moodle. Because I wouldn't, especially for new teachers, I wouldn't recommend doing the Moodle course. The CELTA certificate is valid for life. There is no expiry dates on the certificate. One thing that the employer might ask if you use it like 10 years later, they may ask you about your teaching experience. You know, so if you get it and then you use it like in 2 or 3 years, well, if you're teaching, there is no problem. If you do not teach for 10 years and then you show your certificate, well, probably the employer will ask you questions and will want you to do a demo lesson or something, you know, so, but actually it's for life. Well, it's a good question. So it is not easy to combine CELTA with regular work. If it is, if we talk about the part-time course, you need to remember that you will need to spend Saturdays and part of your Fridays, so at least 12 hours in class. And in addition to that, well, I would say up to 7-8 hours. So you need to be prepared to spend 16 to 20 hours working on the CELTA course every week. So if you're working full time, it's going to be very difficult. So if you're planning to take the course, you need to plan how to reduce the workload to be able to combine it all and not go crazy. If you have more questions about this, you can get in touch with us. We'll be happy to answer. I can tell you more about this. All right, on our Facebook page. Thank you, Natalia. It's not indicated if CELTA was taken. Well, there is no mention in the certificate if that was an online or an offline CELTA. You're absolutely right. After each course, you get the end of course report from the center that you can use when applying for jobs while you're waiting for your certificate to arrive, because normally it could take up to 8 weeks for the certificate to arrive from Cambridge. So in the course report, the mode of the course is indicated. On the certificate, it is not. And the next course we're planning to do here, starting next Friday, it's online. Well, requirements for the CELTA course, Tasha, thank you. You have to be at least 18 years of age, completed secondary education, and your level of English needs to be C1. And you need to have the right motivation to complete the course. Those are the requirements for the CELTA course. No teaching experience is necessary. CELTAS, the next CELTAS course will start on the 29th of January, and it is the same after that. That's the last course we're going to have in Ukraine. So if you have questions, please get in touch with us urgently, and we'll do everything we possibly can to make it possible for you to take this course. Yes, indeed, there are intensive courses that can be done during summer within 30 days. Yes, as I mentioned, so the courses we are planning to do in summer, there will be 3 of them. One will start in June, another one in July, and then August. Those are impossible to combine with any sort of work. And yes, those courses will be 2 weeks plus 2 days long. So we're going to start on Thursday. We're going to have classes on Thursday and Friday if we talk about the online course, and then plus 4 weeks after that. If it's a face-to-face course, it's just 4 weeks. Well, thank you so much. If you have any questions, you can, here's some QR codes for you to help you get in touch with us. So you can see our website, you can see our Instagram page, Facebook, and we're there to help. So thank you very much for being so active today. Just lovely working with you. And thank you very much for the active participation and the interesting questions. And I very much hope to see you in person or in Zoom soon. Yes, if you have any questions, please get in touch with us. Thank you and have a lovely Saturday and Sunday. Bye.